First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Look who I got, guys. I got Russ Hamilton. We all know Russ. And I got Aaron Bell down below. We're going to reintroduce you to our fine young gentleman. We should recognize Aaron Bell from a few little television appearances on shows like 60 Days In and Rookie of the Year. And we should recognize Russ Hamilton from a show called Tier Talk with a great host named Anthony Gangi. Oh, wait.
Hey, Anthony.
Yeah, whoa. Hey, guys, you know what? I got hit with a video. The reason why I want to bring you guys on is each one of you guys have an expert when it comes to use of force, special teams, especially hostage situations. And I saw a video on Facebook about an incident that happened in Arizona in which a librarian was taken hostage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the article, guys. Then I'm going to cut to the sponsor. And then we come back. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourself to my audience. And I want to discuss this video and maybe some tips or tricks that you would provide or some advice just in case someone may find themselves in this situation. So real quick, the video that we're going to see when we come back from our sponsors is coming out of Buckeye, Arizona. Now, this article is from Fox 10, and it's going to give us a brief description of the incident. I'm going to show you guys the video, so stand by for the video as well. And then it's going to give us a little background on the inmate by the name of Timothy Monk who decided to take the librarian hostage. So real quick, the Arizona Department of Corrections has released a video from a hostage situation between an inmate and an employee in a prison library. The incident happened at the Arizona State Prison Complex, Lewis, in Buckeye in December of 2018. Now, according to ADC officials, inmate Timothy Monk took a male library employee hostage with a prison-made blade and demanded to leave the prison. Tactical crews fired a diversionary device into the library and used non-lethal force to take Monk into custody. Protecting the safety and welfare of our employees is paramount, said ADC Director Charles Ryan. We're grateful this was resolved safely and quickly. Our team acted with great professionalism to bring about the best possible outcome, ensuring that our employees was unharmed. Per the ADC, Monk is currently serving 97 years in prison. He came to the Arizona Department of Corrections in 1988. I believe he was 16 at that time, guys, when he was sentenced out of Maricopa County for armed robbery, sexual assault, and kidnapping. He was later convicted out of Pima County in 2006 for aggravated assault, kidnapping, promoting prison contraband, and sexual assault while incarcerated at the Tuscan Prison Complex. The librarian in this video, Alan Herzl, escaped the situation without being hurt, and on January 31st, he was awarded the Department Medal of Valor for his actions. And as quoted by Director Ryan, it took great courage by Mr. Herzl to sit there knowing he was being threatened by a very dangerous inmate. Okay, guys, so that's a little bit of the background of what we're going to be discussing today, a little bit about the video, the situation, a little background on the inmate Timothy Monk, and of course our hero, Mr. Herzl. So when we come back from our sponsors, I'm going to show you guys the video of the hostage situation, and then we're going to introduce you again to our experts, which is Russ Hamilton and Aaron Bell, and then we're going to go right in and discuss the breakdown of the video and give some tips and hopefully answer some questions because we do have some comments when I posted the video. I stand by for our sponsors.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
That's it. Just keep him talking. And stay positive with him. Don't go negative.
No, and I can honestly say all the years I've known you, Monk, I've never seen you at this point. Huh?
Over here. Over here. Don't talk to him. Get him over here right now.
We're gonna find out right now if anyone is on their way, okay?
Set this phone on the ledge over there behind the wall. It's recording.
I told him, fuck with me, I'm gonna show you how bad I am. Why do I gotta do this?
You shouldn't. It should have never came to this. He still can't open up his eyes, Mr. Hartzell?
Not really.
No?
Well, keep opening them a little.
Yeah, and if you rub him, it only makes it worse.
That's right. My left eye's getting better than my right. The right eye's still burning.
Sick to your stomach?
Yep.
Yeah? Is it from the spray?
Probably.
Here's Kelly.
What's up?
Because he said his eyes are half.
So the shank is in his right hand and he's not holding it to the hostage. I think at this point or somewhere, if he goes to this position, we can open the door. We need to go right now. I think if we open the door and put a flashbang right in that porter closet, tell them to get ready.
Give me a towel.
Tell that team one to be ready.
All right, guys, we're back. Okay, so real quick, that's a crazy video, guys. I know you guys saw the video. You know that video is intense, but I know right now you guys are experts. You guys have a lot of questions that I'm sure that you want answered just by the way you review the video. So first, Russ, do you mind introducing yourself to my audience again?
Yeah, my name's Russ Hamilton. I had 27 years with California Department of Corrections. I eventually promoted to sergeant there, retired. Came out of that and did another 3 years for a juvenile detention lockup facility in Central California.
Yeah, it's a long career. Thank you for your service, Russ, by the way.
You bet.
And our man, Aaron Bell. Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name's Aaron Bell. I got a little over 18 plus years of DOC. I'm a member of the CERT team for many years as a TAC team assistant commander, TAC team leader, fugitive task force, warrant apprehension. I've been in many different training evolutions through my career, corrections and law enforcement, and seen a lot of different things in my tenure.
Well, first off, again, Aaron, thank you for your service. Hopefully we get to work together real soon. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Okay, so this happened on at December 26, 2018. So you guys saw this video. So I'm going to start with you, Russ, and I'm going to ask Aaron as well. And guys, feel free to have a dialogue amongst yourself as well if need be. You guys are the experts in this area. All right, so guys, we just saw the video. I got to ask you guys from your experience perspective. I'll start with Russ first, and then we'll go to Aaron. What's your thoughts when you see a video like this, a hostage situation, a civilian involved? What's your thoughts?
Well, my first thought is that first of all, you know, they did have a very good response. But the first thing that I saw was the isolation that took place where we only had the librarian there and then an officer who's momentarily there and then walks away, and then those two are essentially left alone. At that point, you know, it only becomes evident later on that the inmate takes a weapon out of his shoe, apparently, because he has to put that back on for some reason. And I got to hand it to the librarian in the fight for him where he's seated on the floor and the inmate's pulling him back. He does manage to deploy that pepper spray, and that really changed the whole dynamics of the situation at that point. I think that really made things probably in the end more manageable for him. Of course, we'll never know. But I got to hand it to him for being able to deploy that pepper spray and change the way the whole thing was starting to unravel there.
Yeah, you know, first of all, I want to give props out to DOC Arizona. Just watching the film real quick. Great job, guys. Your response time was awesome. You could tell that you guys have some type of tactical team on standby. The different colored uniforms, the actual the entry vests, how you stacked up at the door, the communication with CNT, crisis negotiation team, the negotiator, all that seemed to happen very systematically, and you guys have trained for that. So great job on that part. My only concerns about this is, you know, the level of the inmate, the custody of the inmate obviously has a history, not only on the outside, but along with DOC. What's the policy behind leaving high leveled inmates in a confined area with civilian staff? You know, that's question one. And if that's policy, I don't know. And, you know, if it is a high level custody inmate, you know, I go right back to corrections, you know, 101 is, you know, the guy obviously had a weapon on him. And first and foremost, I want to say to everybody out there, I'm pro officer. It's where I started, and I understand the trials and tribulations of your guys' jobs. And God bless you for doing your jobs out there, because anybody that's willing to walk that line, you got my respect. But at the end of the day, there's rules and regulations we all have to follow. And ultimately, that inmate took a weapon into the library. Is there searches, or is it a pat search? What type of search was conducted on this inmate? Was it thorough enough to, you know, find this contraband? And if that contraband was found on the inmate before entering that library, there probably would never been a hostage situation. That's just the way I look at things. You know, what's going on there? What's that process? What was that sequence that conspired to all this? I do agree with Russ. I give props to the librarian. I do believe being able to deploy chemicals in that small confined area, me being a chemical instructor for many years, that definitely changed the dynamics of the situation. You see in the video, the inmate was disabled, his vision, his breathing, something was going on with his stomach. He wanted to throw up or something, and he confirmed that talking to the negotiator. So definitely good job for the librarian. Goes into, again, policy and procedure, arming non-custody staff. And maybe he was trained in chemical agents with, you know, that type of less than lethal and whatnot. So those are my questions, you know, leading up to it. What type of procedures are in policy to strip an inmate? Is it a pat search? Going into it, if it's a non-custody staff member, a civilian member, he was obviously left alone. If the officer was supposed to remain in that arena or that area with him, obviously that would have been 2-on-1. A response call would have been handled, and the situation would have been handled a little bit more swiftly without being a hostage situation or HRT. All those different aspects.
Well, you did mention something. I want to go back. You mentioned something about you like the fact that the specialized teams were wearing different uniforms. Why is that important?
I just kind of growing up in that aspect, our trials and tribulations are always is training, and being able to identify what job description you have in the facility. Really, these guys showed up. You can look at the uniform the escort officer was using to take the inmate to the library, and with it seemed minutes. I don't know the exact countdown. Obviously, it was before the chemicals, the effect, the decontamination wore off. But a TAC team was at the door. They were suited up in their vest, in their armor. They had great communication. So, obviously anybody in that facility, just for me looking at it quickly, you could tell that this was a tactical response unit that was trained in HRT and how they entered the room, deployed a flashbang. They had probably a 37 or 44 mic they entered with. They had a high ground visual on them. I believe that was somebody looking through a vent and or whatever that was, giving them information. That was awesome communication. That's one of the biggest things in the tactical team that usually goes to the wayside of communications always. These guys were able to look at the inmate where the weapon was, who's having problems breathing, problems seeing. They made entry, and once they made entry, they went direct to threat, we call it. Direct to threat. They basically neutralized the threat and was able to get the hostage out of there, which is outstanding.
Right, and Russ, from your perspective, obviously you recognize a lot of the stuff that Aaron's saying, correct? Are you in agreement?
Oh, absolutely. You know, a couple of things that, you know, really led up and probably, you know, helped the tactical team was, first of all, already, you know, having the chemical agent working on the guy. If you notice that during the course of the video, you hear, I don't know if she's a negotiator or if she was someone that just had rapport with the inmate, but she's questioning the hostage in a way that the hostage is actually able to give intel back to the TAC team about the condition of the inmate's eyes. And at that point there, I think the TAC team was kind of working against the clock a little bit. Usually when something like this happens, the longer you can stretch it out, the better. In this case, they really didn't want this guy to recover from what he was going through with the chemical agents. So it was great that she was able to give that direction. And apparently this inmate, the hostage taker, didn't even clue into that. So that was a great factor. And they had, you know, they had good eyes on it, as Aaron there mentioned, and they were getting good instantaneous intel back from the hostage himself. And I thought that really led up to the successful conclusion. Because when you go into these things, the most dangerous part is always the beginning or where you have a forced resolution at the end. The middle is usually, you know, pretty peaceful and stuff. So those of course are the two parts where it gets the most dangerous, the most dicey for the hostage or hostages, depending on the situation.
Well, I want to kind of, I try to look at to see why the inmate was there. I believe Russ had found something about doing some legal research. Obviously, you have to allow inmates to have access to legal material so they can do their cases. But as I said, the inmate's history that brought him into corrections, an incident that happened in 2006 with a female rookie officer by the name of Laurel Kennedy. Inmate Timothy Monk, when he was 34, took correctional officer Laurel Kennedy hostage at 4:30 p.m. Monday by pulling her into a cell and holding her with a shank made from plexiglass and a razor blade. He was charged with sexual assault on Laurel Kennedy as well. So you have an inmate that has this history of obviously problematic behavior on the outside, but most importantly to me, I look at the institutional adjustment. So that incident that happened in 2006, in my mind, that's it. He just forever put himself in restraints no matter where he goes. So again, I don't understand how he may have that liberty or that sense of freedom, but that's not for me to judge. I don't know their policies. But I do want to mention something. The librarian, as brave as he is, because he was, and this is not to minimize or negate that the hero, he's a hero. I mean, what exactly did he? Remain calm, did not agitate the inmate, when most people would probably be doing just the opposite. I did feel at some extent, and hopefully he doesn't take it the wrong way, but again, we're looking to be informative and help people, learn from the situation. I did feel that he may have been a little complacent, though, with that inmate being in that area. I noticed a few times he had his back towards him at the very beginning. So again, Aaron, how did you feel about the body language between the potential hostage, but again, our hero, and the inmate when the inmate first entered?
Just from my initial viewing of the film, it seemed to me that and again, Russ, I didn't know he was there looking at legal work or documentation. It seemed to me that he was on a work detail because the librarian obviously knew this inmate. He felt comfortable around this inmate. He turned his back on this inmate. it looked to me the inmate was trying to stick something underneath the door and or barricade the door to where the entry team couldn't come in. That's what it looked to me. It didn't work out that way. But there was some type of relationship established between the librarian and that inmate. And the librarian felt as if he was comfortable enough to turn the back on this inmate, which, again, going back to what you say, redundant information, is this guy has a previous record in DOC, and he's walking around unrestrained, and he's around civilian staff. And so, all these different factors lead up to hostage situation.
Right, and again, we're focused on two things now. We're even giving them the benefit of doubt, unfortunately, for the crime on the outside. But what really was the 2006 incident on the inside. In 2006, he did it again to our staff.
Completely agree with you, Anthony. What they're doing now, and a lot of people don't understand their judgment. They're coming to prison. That's what we're there. We're there to confine these guys, make sure they don't harm us, don't harm each other, and hopefully make them better products of society. Only thing that we can ultimately judge them on and look at is their disciplinary actions on the inside. So at the end of the day, this guy committed, horrendous crimes on the outside world, comes to prison and does the same thing. That inmate should have ever been without leg irons or shackles anywhere he went, or maybe a two-man escort, just to make sure that this is not going to happen again. Heightened security protocols based on the inmate's actions. Every action has a reaction, and that's all it is. We can only react to it. But if there is a past behavioral issues there, and we know it probably is going to happen again, this guy's doing, you said, 97 point something years, 100 years rounded up in prison. What does he have to lose, ultimately?
And again, he has nothing to lose, and it's easy justifiable as to why he would continue to have to be in restraints each movement he does, because not only did he pose a threat coming in, but there's proof that he continued to pose a threat as his time progressed inside the correctional facilities. Russ, obviously I'm thinking real quick that this room is cambered up. I'm assuming that there's maybe some monitors and some control points so they can actually see what's going on in these rooms. So even though we may not have the officer standing in the room directly, I would like to think that there's an officer maybe in a control point looking in on the room by a camera, because it looks like the response team got there pretty quick.
Well, the thing that I noticed is number one, that entire room, the library, had lots of windows. So there were lots of angles for any staff that might have been posted at different positions to be able to see in there. And then obviously, because we got the video, that there was some sort of camera work going on too. So somebody was bright enough and picked up fast enough that they seemed to get a decent response there in a decent time.
Yeah, because one of my wife's first question when we saw the video was same thing that you guys brought up, was why was he alone with the inmate? And I know, I wish I could know more why the inmate was there, but I do tell people sometimes there could be cases like you can have one officer in a school and they're watching all these different rooms, but what we always need is, you have the one officer, his span of control, obviously, which could be a few rooms, but usually each one of those rooms have cameras and the officer's able to see the rooms on a monitor. I'm thinking that may be the case here, but I like what you said also, Russ, that the room had a lot of windows. So there was, I'm sure no matter where the officers are at, they were able to always see directly in. And I think the inmate was aware of that as well, because I think the inmate looked, as soon as he took the hostage, he looked right out the front windows. So he knew immediately somebody was coming. What's your thoughts on that, Aaron? Do you think that this inmate knew that staff was coming right away?
Yeah, obviously the inmate's been in that library before. He grabbed the guy, rear naked choke from behind, just taking, the guy was spraying with the librarian, was spraying with OC, took the can, threw it away from him, got him away, and dragged him, it looked like, into maybe a utility closet. So there's only one way in and one way out. Obviously this tactical team, they have some good training behind them, a quick response. If they had a different point of entry, the simultaneous entry, they would have made that. There's only one way in, one way out. Visual on him the whole time. He tried to put the hostage between him and the door, which is typical. We get that. So yes, I do agree with Russ. There's, the camera up top looking in that we saw the voice talking, I'm assuming was a camera or a control center. I'm unaware. Again, and I agree with you. Hopefully they had some type, if they're going to leave that type of caliber inmate in a room with a non-trained staff member, there's some type of video camera, something going on watching them 24/7. But obviously through the command center, they were able to relay the information to the TAC team of what was going on at that exact moment. So when they made entry, everything was very fluent.
Well, I do like, I'll be honest with you, the way the camera does capture the whole room. So whoever did the placement of the camera in those facilities, especially in that library room, it seemed to cover even that what would have been a spot where, even though it's not visible by the window, the camera was able to pick it up. Because think about it, he removed the hostage away from the window, so there was limited view, but it didn't matter because even though it was in that closet, the camera still had a direct view on him. So I think that was a really good camera placement, if you will.
I'm sure Russ will agree with me. I was anticipating the inmate to pull the hostage all the way into that closet. So we're going to visual. That's what I was waiting for, and it just didn't happen. And again, going back to what you said, sir, I believe that chemicals started to take effect. He was a little discombobulated. He didn't really know up from down. He couldn't breathe that well, which made it a lot easier and swifter for that TAC team to make entry and take control of the situation. So good thinking by the librarian for doing so. That could have ended it a lot differently, real quickly. And again, I was shocked that in the room behind him looked big enough to go into. And so I was anticipating for them to go in there. And if they would have made entry into that room without chemicals being deployed, there's probably a good likelihood.
A different outcome.
The guy would have been stabbed a couple times. Hopefully not life-threatening. So, you know, the good Lord is always watching down over the good guys, I'll tell you that. And you guys know, 27 years, Russ, you said you've been in this occupation. You can look at the demographics of a facility, and for any TAC team, it's almost a full-blown nightmare and how they're set up. I'm sure that glass, this is just hypothetically, I'm sure that glass is somewhat shatterproof. So if they couldn't breach the door, if the inmate was able to barricade himself in the door, we're looking at some type of barrier cutter, welder, a blowtorch, etc. Then now we're going to have to breach some type of ballistic window, which is just a nightmare. We've worked on that before, even if that facility has the tools to do such. So yeah, I look at this and you can play it 1,000 different ways. It's just very lucky, and obviously after the history with DOC Arizona and what they've gone through in the last couple decades, learn from their mistakes. And obviously they've trained their TAC teams at a different level to be able to respond in a timely manner. I don't think we could have, and I can tell you that. We would have had basically a perimeter team, but to make entry that quick, kudos to them. They did it, and and I do agree with Russ. A direct threat. You know what's going on. You know the inmate. You know the inmate's history. You know what's going on. He has a weapon. It's a life or death situation, and overwhelming violence. And they did a great job. And at the end of it, and this is again talking about true correctional professionals. These guys were able to get the hostage out of there, restrain the inmate, and watching what I saw in the film, they were professionally doing it. There's no retaliation tactics, and that's just,
that's key, because I always tell people, once those handcuffs are on, game is over.
Yeah, their emotionals, that emotional factor was right here. It was professional the whole time. They got him. They did what they did. They controlled him. They got him out. Looked like some type of medical arrived on scene. They picked him up, and off to medical he goes. I'm sure the camera was with him the whole time, observation, et cetera, et cetera. So kudos to those guys, man. And that facility should be, that TAC team commander and their philosophies and their applications and training. You can tell they train a lot within their facility. And we run into that problem a lot, to where we train indirectly for real life situations. And that's looking at that application. You can tell those guys knew the area, they knew the room, they had to go around a few pieces of furniture, and it's a close quarter combat situation. And I don't know, Russ, if you saw it any different. I don't think any rounds were deployed except for a flashbang.
Yeah, that was the flashbang. I wondered about that a little bit. because I've been in proximity to flashbangs before, and it didn't seem to have a big effect.
No, I thought it was maybe a training grenade.
Yeah, I was wondering that, and it certainly wasn't a Magnum. So,
yeah, and the guy entered. The point man had a 37 or 40 Mike. Inmate saw the gun. He was like, "Oh no, 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 no!" And it looked like number 2 guy, point defense, was able to grab him, and then they just all kind of went in and did what they did. They obviously, directed threat, and they were able to pull the hostage out right away. Covered the hostage, got him out of there, and took care of the bad guy. And again, just the way their professionalism was after they got the inmate cuffed. I really have to say, that emotional factor is up here. Your adrenaline's pumping, you're running and you're gunning, and that's one of your guys. It's somebody on your team that's part of your family in corrections, and he's been gassed, he's hurt, and they were professionals. So kudos to those guys. Those guys in that TAC team, if you ask me, they should get a medal too.
Yeah, I agree. And again, Russ, we actually did a show not too long ago about how people don't understand the conflict of how after stuff like this happens, how we have to remain professional. We can't take it personal. And then also the process of how we try to protect each other, which would be the switching of individuals that were directly involved. In this case here with the specialized team, they probably can't switch.
I bet you after all that was said and done, and the TAC team probably escorted him to medical, right, and then staff members showed up and they were overseeing the inmate now, those TAC guys probably went back to their armory, high-fived each other, sat down, had a Coke, generate some documentation, and went home to their families, because that's what they train for.
That's what heroes do.
That's what they train for, and not to say they're wanting something like that to happen, but that's what they train for.
And you know what's great about that is, again, I know I've seen you say it, Aaron. I've seen Russ say it. That's why we play those what-if scenarios in our head, because at any time those what-if scenarios can happen, and obviously it's playing those what-if scenarios in your head that avoid that complacency. But you know what's funny? In this video, something else unique happened that I want to go back towards the beginning of the video again. I put up, I have a community board on YouTube, because once you get over a certain amount of followers, they allow you to have a community board, which you can take polls. And I remember asking my audience, my loyal subscribers, our family, how do you feel about civilians carrying OC or pepper spray? And there was a little bit of a debate, but I forget what the percentage was, but I believe it was maybe 65, 70% letting them have it as long as the training's there and whatnot. And then 30% kind of was just not feeling it because of the liability perspective, like basically, even though we're training them, if they still do it wrong, who's going to be held responsible? But this could be a good case for why we may want civilians to carry pepper spray or OC. So I'll go with you, Aaron, first. What are your thoughts on civilians being able to carry OC or pepper spray?
I agree with it, and this is just me. Vacancy rates are high. They always are in correctional facilities. Not everybody can do this job. And again, I'm sure Russ will agree with me. If that librarian did not have chemical agents on his person, this could have turned out completely different. Apples and oranges, different arena. Are we going to arm teachers? Kid pulls out a gun in his school. Teacher has the training, the mental set, preparation, the trigger time. He's able to direct threat and, defuse a situation compared to 5, 6, 10, 12 kids being killed. I mean, at the end of the day, this is the world we live in. Now amplify that by 1,000 times, and now we're working in a correctional facility. I think anybody that works in that correctional facility, mental health, librarians, education, I don't care who it is, religious entities, they should have a mental mindset of whom they're dealing with, and they should have some type of background in self-defense and the understanding that things can go bad. We're dealing with felons here. We're not dealing with your average day citizens. And subsequently, even in the world, things go bad. But, it's going to go bad even 10 times faster in a correctional facility because of those, the entities that we're trying to take care of. So, yes, I'm saying if they get the proper training, and it comes down to training. I'm a big guy in training, guys. I believe that once you train, you're just preloading a file in your brain, and when something reacts, If something happens, you react to that. That file's open, it's regened, and you react to it. If there's not a file there, you're going to sit there stupid. So if the department is willing to write that check for the chemicals and write that check for the training for the civilian staff and get them clicked up, then yes, do it, because it makes our lives a lot easier, obviously, from the video, and it makes the inmates aware that even if an officer is not present based on policy or whatever that is, that the outcome could be completely different.
And well said, Aaron. I agree 100%. Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on civilians carrying OC pepper spray?
I'll say this. I agree with it, but I have one caveat. And that caveat is this, is as much time as we spend trying to protect ourselves from administration cutting corners, I don't want them to have more excuses to cut more corners. And I just look at it from the thing is if they're looking at it like, well, you know what, we're down some officers, but these teachers are out there and they've got some chemical agents, they are still not functioning as a fully trained correctional officer does. So that's the caveat I would give.
Well, Russ, I want you to explain something real quick. So we're looking at a difference between protect versus respond. So basically, what you're saying is you're good if the civilians are using it to protect themselves. But I want to paint a picture here. Let's say an officer is getting assaulted on a unit. Would we expect, because the civilian has that protective gear or the OC now to respond and help the officer?
Well, I don't know. That's a little bit more loaded than I was looking at it. I was trying to look at it from the position of whether or not we're going to try and scrape by with fewer officers.
Yeah,
we've got some other staff.
You mean like sort of like how I don't know if this may be the same, but how the FBOP kind of works, the civilians, and I know they hate when I say it because there's no civilians there, but the teachers are able to take on the roles of custody, the mental, person.
I think what Russ is saying is vacancy rates are high. So if they have the ability to do their jobs, the administration is going to come in and say, hey, we need your help to go work the units. You can work in control center. And they start filtering these non-custody people in to work officers' posts. And that takes away from what an officer truly is.
There's a difference between someone filling in as a stopgap measure and me as an officer out there who actually operates in that environment day in and day out and has that level of experience and that higher level of training and hopefully that higher level of drive to be doing those things that an officer should be doing. And I just worry that they would, look at that and go, hey, you know what, we can get by today. Because we know what that leads to.
27 years, Russ, you already know. I mean, at the end of the day, you have a roster you have to fill, right? Mandated posts you have to fill. You know that, Anthony. So I see where you're going with that. I just take it one step further. Just looking at the film, the guy also had a radio.
Yeah.
So he had a communication factor. And, to me, and that's why at first I didn't know if he was a librarian, maybe he's a deputy warden, maybe he was a classification officer that was cross-trained in the security sphere. I didn't know because he had OC, he had a radio, he was in kind of a suit, casual wear, it looked like. And, but as a librarian, to me, that's a little bit odd. We don't allow non-custody members to have radio communication.
Security radio.
To me, that's just, so just looking at it real quick, doing my job, I said, well, this guy's, he's custody. He has to be. And usually, go ahead.
Yeah, you're actually hitting the nail right on the head because obviously we're talking about security radio for people that don't understand that. So obviously you don't want civilians walking around with those security radios. We talked about this, quality versus quantity. You know what I mean? Are we just filling the post just to fill the post? Or are we actually filling the post with qualified people to do the job? And now with these facilities that are seriously understaffed, Arizona actually as far back as 2006 faced some seriously understaffing concerns. I mean, they were at one point down 13%. And I don't know what it's like now, but they basically, in my opinion, the concern is when we start feeling that hit, those numbers aren't there, the department starts to get desperate to fill those positions. So my question is, who are we putting in those positions? Are those people qualified, or are we just desperate and, hey, a body on a post is a body on the post? So you think something like this, Russ, can open the door to people taking those positions that normally are in custody, but again, they're just a body to fill the post?
Yeah, I think I'm just mostly worried about propagating that mentality and then moving it forward, and everything works beautifully for a little while until suddenly it doesn't. Because I've seen too much of that. And if you look at what happened in this, now we know a lot less about this case than one that happened earlier this week, where we had an issue with administration was actually doing policy-wise. When we look at what happened in Ohio, I mean, obviously some terrible policies there. This one's a little less cut and dry, but when we get into it, we might find that there were some horrible policy ideas being put forth there. So we really got to watch. We really got to watch what some of these brainstorms that are going on that put things out there that come back and rebound and hurt us.
Well, I like what both you guys said, because the first thing I would do actually is look at the policy for that area, look at the policy or the post orders for the officer who worked in that area. Obviously, I don't know why the inmate was there. Again, we're thinking maybe legal. At first, I thought like Aaron did, it was a job detail. But again, maybe as people watch these videos, they'll hit the comments, and maybe you can engage another episode where I think that if we know why the inmate's there, then we can start talking about a little bit more in detail of, you know, what went wrong the moment that inmate entered. And definitely, I will say one thing that I think we're on the point with is definitely the inmate, because of the way he carried himself in 2006, forever, in my mind, shackled him. So he had a lot more freedom than I feel he should have been granted. Again, going past what brought him in, but we do talk about institutional adjustment. Once you do that to any officer, I'm sorry, man, it's done. I don't care. It's done. Laurel Kennedy in 2006 brought her in a cell, and what I was reading was sexually assaulted her, you know, and the guy's still walking around free. Now, let me ask you guys a question, because I want to get down to closing. So I want to ask you guys a question in case someone ever finds themselves in a hostage situation. Now, mind you, I believe all departmental policies have in play where we don't negotiate during a hostage situation. So this case here, this guy wanted to be broken out of prison, and in 2006 he wanted to go to a prison in Montana. Obviously he never got it, but the thing is that there's policies in play where we don't negotiate with hostage situations. And also, if, let's say, you know, I'm a high level official, I'm on the administrative level, if I ever get taken hostage, I lose all my power. It is what it is. But again, that's to protect the integrity of the facility. But technically, it's also to protect me, because you could take me, but you're not going to get what you want from it. So believe it or not, those no hostage negotiation things, that actually works in our benefit, because it lessens the motivation for an inmate to want to take you. But I thought this guy was very well in what he did. He, you know, was able to defend himself a little bit, but remain calm. So again, I'll start with Aaron, then go with Russ. What advice would you give to someone if they found themselves in a situation like this, Aaron?
You know, my advice, if this, you know, that's a hard situation. I do believe the librarian acted, and he almost felt like he was, to me, watching the video, and I watched it several times, that he was okay. He was just talking to the inmate. He couldn't see, and you know, but he was just sitting there knowing that response was coming. My advice to anybody that's ever taken hostage, know that we are coming for you. I would basically not try to aggravate the inmate or the hostage taker. I would not give out any information to help him. You know, and I go back again, the guy had a radio. That's huge. I mean, Ali. So a guy has a radio and he has chemicals he can use on us now. If there's radio communication, the inmate has any type of gray matter between point A and point B, he's going back and forth between channels, and he knows what we're going to do when we're doing it. Not a good thing to have, right? It's just one of those, you know, those aspects of the job. Is always comply. Do what you can to go home at night, whatever that is. You know, I always come down and I tell all my staff, one of the biggest things I do now is training all over the place. Is officer safety first. Look at your policies, know your institution, close your eyes, run scenarios through your head. You know, train for the worst possible day feasible and pray for the best. And if you train for the worst, nothing that, you know, more than likely you're going home at night. To end it like real quick is comply. At the end of the day, you're taken hostage. If you can fight your way out, get out. But most likely that's a one-on-one situation. Again, look at the demographics.
Right.
Look at those demographics. This guy, he was an older man, physically was inadequate. You could tell. And nothing against him.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Physically inadequate. He was a soft target. And that's why, going back to what I usually say, you know, he looked to me as a deputy warden. And so he's a high-ranking official and or a warden. So the inmate's making a point, right? Or the librarian. So that inmate's just stupid. And a life's a life. I get that. Don't take me wrong in that context. A life's a life. But if an inmate's going to go that far with something, they usually look at they try to get it to where they can take a high-ranking individual to really make a statement. It wasn't really thought out, I don't think. And, you know, the guy complied. He seemed to be somewhat comfortable in the situation. And I would be comfortable working there too because the response, excuse my language, but damn, they did a damn good job. Mm-hmm. Usually our crisis negotiation team will come in, back and forth. Local authorities will be notified, et cetera, et cetera. These guys came in, no BS, and they handled the situation, and they got out.
And I also want to add something too. Obviously, the inmates know the environment. The inmate knew exactly how he can get that weapon into that area because he had it in his shoe.
Right.
So, I mean, again, we talked about the pat frisk before, but, you know, I know a lot of inmates will definitely hide weapons in their shoe because we don't look at their shoes most of the time. It's sad to say, but it's true.
You know, my occupation, if it's a higher custody, I'm sure Russ, you'll agree, the higher custody of inmate,
they're getting stripped.
There's this full strip search. So at some point they're put in a confined area where all their garments are taken off, including their shoes. You go through a full strip search, and each garment is checked before you give it back to the inmate. It's very simple. I mean, anybody that's worked in the realm of corrections for a year knows, you know, you take those shoes and you bend them back and forth. They don't bend, whatever. Take the sole out. It is what it is.
So I want to say something too. I don't know how big this movement was. Again, I don't know why the inmate was there. Right. But if the inmate was a work detail, hypothetically, a lot of facilities have in play the strip before you go and the strip when you leave. Again, that's all efforts to protect. Also, if you have an inmate going from a higher level to a lower level, strips are in play. Again, let's say you have an inmate going into the community for a hospital trip or whatnot. Obviously, they're getting stripped before they go out. They're getting stripped when they come back in. So my thing is here, we focused a lot on the pat frisk, but you do have a higher level inmate. But again, I don't know the policy. Does the policy allow only for the pat frisk, or if it is a work detail, are we not going the extra mile and stripping the inmate, you know? But it looked like this inmate knew exactly where to hide the weapon because he knew exactly where nobody would look for it. And again, and I know I would probably be guilty of it, so I'm not pointing the finger and saying, but it's a wake-up call for me. After we watch a video like this, I think people start having to not underestimate that sneaker, that shoe where a lot of weapons can be hidden. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Well, yeah, you know, it's the problem, I think, is that we are becoming, you know, too much kinder, too much gentler. People are wanting to, you know, move away from the use of segregation, the use of too many, you know, so-called intrusive searches.
Right.
But it's really Corrections 101, and especially when you're dealing with these higher level inmates, you have to have, you know, more staff there to get those searches done, and you have to be trying to control those avenues, lanes, and choke points of where you have these contraband problems occurring. You know, you want to try and funnel the contraband that is happening to those choke points so that you can root it out, find it, and get rid of it. But you know, who knows how this one exactly happened? But we got to get back to that. We got to be, you know, focusing on that more.
And I will say, guys, I don't want, again, it's not feasible to, some cases the movements are so big, it's not feasible to pat frisk every inmate. But the key is that sometimes we should have in play, obviously, the pat frisking of random inmates, you know, and sometimes that's enough to keep inmates on their toes because they don't know if this day they're going to be the one. And in some cases, I believe there's policies that when you have mass movements, there's a certain amount of numbers that each GA or each, I don't know, the officers that stand post, whatever you call them at your facilities, have to pat down. And again, I'm assuming with the pat down, again, as long as it doesn't stop the rest of the movement, we could go a little extra by telling the inmate, hey, at this point, because we see videos like this, take off your shoes. You know, take off your shoes because you're checking the clothes. If they have a jacket, you're telling them take it off. You're running through their jacket, but yet for some reason we may not tell them take off the shoes. And again, we're not getting everyone. We can't do that, but I think if we do the random ones, one thing is it's enough to keep people on their toes, but it does give us enough time to at least do a few thorough pat frisk. And again, I wonder if that's going to be something after watching videos like this, that's something that we have to start taking more seriously. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, the inmate is an inter-facility escort. Inmate came out from unit. He was pat searched, went to a pat search. And during a pat search, we don't make them remove their shoes.
No.
We don't train on that. It's just so now looking at that, we're going to have to look at that and say, wow, okay, we can use a wand. Does a wand work on plexiglass? No. I mean, so inmates are smart too. They start looking at what we did. That was a metal piece, so a wand would have caught that. But so maybe we implement something in the policy to where if you're going to be escorted within a facility, you are in some, you know, type of flip-flops and or some type of, you know, correctional shoes that are see-through or whatever those are. And we can look at the feet or socks and determine if there's any type of contraband. I've been in a few facilities different from where I live, and they've implemented that, and it seems to work very well. Now, when they're going to rec and they're doing different things of that nature, they can put on their shoes or their rec shoes, go out play kickball, soccer, where they're playing out there. I get all that. But if I'm taking them from point A to point B and it's a lower custody level inmate, level 1, level 2, level 3, and policy dictates they have to be pat searched, strip searched, they have a certain type of shoe they put on their feet, and it's, you know, lift your left, lift your right up, and we can see on the bottom of that, and it's easily detected if there's contraband on the feet or whatever that is. Remove your shoes. You know, just looking at, you know, what we missed, again, saying, wow, this happened. Let's take the time to make it right.
Right, I agree. And you know what, guys? If you're doing these movements and you do these random pat searches, and again, obviously at this point we saw this video, maybe it's time we do have the removal of the shoes. It doesn't stop the movement. You know, you're not patting down every inmate. You're patting down random few, which just keeps people on their toes because it's the anticipation of, will I be patted down today? And the movement keeps going. So I don't think it will slow down anything. And another thing is again, with the contraband usually comes from where the person's coming from or where the destination. You know, usually the transition is where we stop it. So I think we do have to focus. I mean, yeah, we focus on our searches, don't get me wrong, definitely. But I think a good part of it is the traveling of contraband from one area to the other, which is where this comes into play, the movement from point A to point B. So I think when it comes to that, we should go the extra mile. And, you know, again, as long as it doesn't slow down anything, because I don't think it will, I see nothing wrong. I would say, hey, you know what, do me a favor, just take off your shoes. And then you just go through the shoes.
And Russ will agree with me. If you put it in policy, in this policy, it's going to get done. That's the golden rule. It's part of your post orders, part of your policy. During that pat search now, the inmate has to remove his or her shoes, right? Absolutely. Well, the inmate's going to do what? Even if the facility doesn't want to fork out that extra money for clear shoes or whatever that is for extra about $100.
Go through the shoes.
Well, yeah, now the inmate doesn't want to sit there and tie his or her shoes and take the time. So they're going to wear little flip-flop shoes. They're going to wear sandals, shower shoes, whatever that is. And that process is going to become systematic and easier as we go.
I like what you just said, something so awesome, actually. Russ, you got to agree. They become conditioned. You know what I mean? So at first, it's like, what are you doing? But eventually, you're right. And then again, they try to make things easier for themselves. So they'll wind up slowly putting themselves in a situation where they're wearing the flip-flops. You know, you're 100% correct. It's that process. And hey, Russ, in closing, would like anything to say to the audience?
Yeah, you know, I think that one thing when you're playing your what if games and stuff, and you're looking at these kind of hostage situations, try and get in front of it. Try and be cognizant of the inmate's body language, what they're doing. Make sure you get your searches done. If you do get into a hostage situation, don't antagonize the inmate, like Aaron was saying. Humanize yourself. You know, make eye contact, but make it soft eye contact. Don't volunteer anything, but answer their questions the best you can. And be aware that you should not try and force the tactical team to have to come too early. You don't want to do that. You want to give them time to get set. Sometimes if they're a big enough tactical team, they may take turns switching and practicing in a similar unit with the same layout so they can get there. Let that time stretch out as long as you can. If you have multiple hostages and not everyone can make it out, do not try and escape, because you're gonna force a situation where the TAC team has to come in, or they're gonna start executing hostages. So you want to put yourself in the best possible position to get rescued. Also, be advised if it's a protracted one. Aaron will tell you, you know, there's a good chance that if they come in there and rescue you, you might be handcuffed. So, you know, take it for what it's worth, because they don't always know who you are, and people might have switched clothes, and you got to worry about Stockholm syndrome. So all those things taken into consideration, get yourself into a position where you can survive.
Hey, Russ, I do like one thing that you said, too, when you mentioned the escape. The last thing you want to do is also affect the security of another area, because now the response team has to fight through another area now just to get to the area of concern. So that's great. You don't want to have the concern from your spot bleed out into another area. So if by all chance, at least if you guys can and have some level of control, try your best to try to stay in that one area, because I've seen people like, oh, if I got the keys, I don't know, like I had officers a long time ago that would say, well, we should be given the keys because if something happens, we're trapped in the unit. It's like, yeah, but that's the case. Our best chance to save you is if you're trapped in the unit, because the problem here is if you have that keys and you open up the door, the floodgate, now we lose the yard, the unit, the support. So you want to keep things contained in the one area so the response team is not focused on other concerns. They're going directly to the area that's in need, because you're going to bring the whole issue out.
Yeah, smaller perimeters are easier to manage.
Yeah, of course. Hey, Aaron, any final advice for the audience?
You know, again, just redundant information. Again, great job, DOC Arizona. Great response out there. The man made it home safely to his family. That's great. You did your job. Go home, pat yourself on the back, have a beer. That's what you're paid to do. Sometimes going to work sucks. You rise to the occasion. You conquered it. Good for you. Again, yes, you're ever taken hostage. Completely agree. We're trained to treat everybody as a hostage taker. We come in, we blow the doors. Everybody should be face down, ass up. Everybody's going to be bagged and tagged. We'll take you out. We'll separate you at that time. Obviously, there's discretion. Anthony and I, if my TAC team was going in and I knew Anthony, I'm looking at you, more than likely, we have a protocol to follow. That's what we're going to do, but we're going to separate you right away and take care of you. But in a situation like that, we don't have time to do so. And again, old school corrections guy, 27 years, position yourself to where you know that facility and you know where we're going to enter so we can rescue you fast. That's all that is. And we're looking at you, we're coming for you, and understand the dynamics of the situation. And we ultimately want to stop the situation, preserve the officer's life first and foremost, and also the inmate's life. You know, that's what we're there, just to preserve life. But again, outstanding job, DOC Arizona. Great training. Maybe someday we'll be able to go out there, see what they do, how they rock and roll, because their response was just phenomenal.
And great closing there. And guys, just want to mention something, a couple of things before we come to a close. This is going to bring up very interesting dialogue on the comments, because we're talking about two things I thought that we could take from this video. The civilian using the OC, what's your thoughts on that? Again, we're in agreement with it, obviously, after this situation. And the checking of the inmate's shoes. maybe that is something we should implement. And I don't think it's going to stop the movement if it's done in a manner like I mentioned, the random, and movement still continues. You're just focused on the one. No different. Just tell the guy to take off his shoes. But after watching a video like this, and now, by the way, guys, this video is going viral, not because of us, but it's already out there. People are going to be thinking it anyway. So now we have to take advantage of the other side. If people are going to think, hey, I can put a weapon in my shoe, then we have to be ready for the fact that what's probable, right, guys? That a weapon can go in somebody's shoe. So, hey, I think this is great dialogue to have. I'm sure we'll have Aaron on again. Of course, we'll have Russ on again. And we'll be discussing more topics like this and doing some reviews on some of the videos that make it past the, I guess, the confines of the wall and out into the public. So as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. And as always, guys, stay safe.